Hey everyone, this is Casey with CReeves Makes. In today's video, I will be building a new cabinet and clamping table for my drill press. I would like to thank Craig Tools for sponsoring today's video and for supplying me with the all-new adaptive cutting system. If you are looking for a system that can cut a variety of materials cleanly and precisely, you should check out the ACS. I will post a link down below in the description with more details. Plans for this project will be available on my website at CReevesMakes.com. I have a large table saw, but I wanted to see how well I could break down full-size sheet goods using this system. I have to say that it produced smoother than expected cuts, and the dust collection worked well compared to standard circular saws. Also, the cuts were very consistent across the board as the system has integrated measuring rails. There are also precision machined holes for the Versa stops to assist in both accurate perpendicular and 45-degree angled cuts. Once all the cuts were out of the way, I moved on to pocket holes. Pocket hole jigs make projects like this simple and easy to assemble. This is a very basic cabinet built with 3/4 inch plywood, and it was going to be residing in my shop, so it was nothing out of the ordinary. Once all of the pocket holes were drilled, I moved on to assembly. Here I am putting on the side panels, and I always use glue and screws to hold the main carcass together. My drill press is 14-inch capacity and it's pretty heavy, so I wanted the confidence that this cabinet would stand the test of time. I am using a pocket hole clamp to hold the panel in place while I add the screws. Another method that I use is to tack the joint with an 18-gauge brad nailer to hold everything together, and then I go back with screws to lock it all down. Both methods work great and will produce excellent results. For the back panel, I simply add glue to the edges and slid it into place. If you have 90-degree corner clamps, they work great for projects like this. They hold the corners nice and tight while allowing the screw installation via the small pocket area. To install the shelves, I made 4 spacers from scrap wood and set them against the walls to rest the shelves onto. I then went back and installed all of the screws. The top of this cabinet will be made from a piece of leftover melamine, and I wanted to add some structure beneath it. So I added 3 pieces of plywood to act as anchoring points for the top to mount to. I added glue to the edges and tacked them in place with my brad nailer, and then went back and screwed them in after the glue had set up. Moving on to the melamine top, I cut it to shape and size on the ACS. I was curious if the material would slip at all, being that it was a very slick surface, but I was impressed to see that the grippiness of the track and the position of the Versa stops in the table ensured accurate cuts and smooth results. I had cut the top just oversized, so after securing it with screws, I used a flush trim bit in my router to come back and clean up the edges. I decided to add some hard maple to the edges of the tabletop to match this cabinet to my large assembly table. This will also add a durable edge protection to the melamine top panel, which tends to chip easily. These pieces are basic 1x2 nominal dimension, and I glued and nailed them into place. And once they were installed, I went back with an 1/8 inch roundover bit and put a profile on all exposed corners and edges. After the top was complete, I wanted to finish the look of the plywood on the cabinet. I had some leftover maple strips from a previous project and cut it to length and glued it into place on the plywood. I used superglue in random spots along with wood glue and blue painter's tape to hold the bands in place. From there, it was onto the cabinet drawer. As in past projects, I do basic drawer builds with brad nails and glue. I cut the bottoms to size, and this helps keep the drawers square. I've never had an issue with drawers falling apart or separating under heavy weight, but if I ever needed to, I could always add screws or pocket holes to keep them together. Once the drawer was built, I installed slides into the cabinet by setting them onto spacer blocks and securing them with screws. To mount the drawer front, I pre-drilled a hole in its center and then drilled 4 holes into the face of the drawer box itself. I then used CA glue and a screw in the pre-drilled center hole to hold the front into place. Next, I took the drawer out and secured the front from inside using those 4 holes. After that, I removed the single screw in the center, and that was used for the drawer pull. If your drawer pulls have shorter screws, you can use a Forstner bit to drill a counterbore from the inside, and this will allow the screw to reach. After the drawer was complete, I installed it and checked the slides. It was time for casters. I have a great set of 3-inch urethane casters on my old cabinet, so I stole them for my new one. To make the job easier, I took the new cabinet and flipped it over on top of the old one so the working height was more comfortable. I like to trace the caster mounting holes and pre-drill them to avoid splitting the edges of the plywood. I use large fender washers and pocket hole screws to hold the casters on. Once the casters were mounted, I could set the drill press onto its new cabinet. Now it's time for the table. Again, using a piece of leftover melamine, I laid out the size of the table that I wanted, taking note of the drill press's center post and its features. I marked the center of where the drill chuck would contact the table and used that as a reference for the layout. I had several small pieces of Kreg mini and track clamp from past projects, so I wanted to incorporate that into the table as well. I also wanted a sacrificial centerpiece that was square and easy to replace. I cut 8 5-inch squares from leftover melamine scrap. The layout was starting to come together. Kreg also supplied me with a piece of their heavy-duty track, which I planned to use for the upper fence. I cut this to length on the miter saw. I then marked a piece of plywood with mounting positions of the cast iron drill press table and pre-drilled 2 holes where the best access would be from underneath. I then used a router to remove some material from the top of the plywood so that I could use 2 5/16 toilet bolts to secure the table to the drill press. Now it's time to make a mess. I wanted to route dado grooves into the melamine to hold the Kreg mini track, so I set up my router table with a 3/4 inch dado bit and cut the slots to a perfect fit. Having this kind of setup in your shop quickly spoils you as to what you can achieve accurately. Once the grooves were cut, I marked the position of all the components to the tabletop and then pre-drilled a bunch of holes so that I can mount everything. The Kreg clamp track uses 1/4 inch mounting hardware, so I had to lay that out and pre-install it to secure the tracks. I wanted to be able to remove the sacrificial center easier, so I used a 1-inch Forstner bit to remove a section of the edge on that piece. Then it was on to screwing everything down and testing the fitment on the drill press. Using 2 5/16 fender washers and plastic knobs, I secured the clamp table to the cast iron drill press table. Once mounted, I checked how easily I could remove the sacrificial center. From there, I ran a flush trim bit over all the edges to make sure that they were perfectly flush, and then started adding more maple edge caps. Again, these were 1x2 material and held on with wood glue and brad nails. I cut the front openings where the T-bolts and clamps could be inserted, but you can also slide the hardware in from the back as well. After the edge caps were completed, it was onto the fence. Using some 3/4 inch plywood, I determined where I wanted everything mounted. I quickly realized that when using short or small bits, the drill press handles would interfere with the fence, so I came up with a quick sliding solution. Using a jigsaw, I cut a notch out of the right side of the plywood fence, and this would allow the handles to clear. I then mounted the fence to the bottom flat portion. I set the fence onto the table and installed the Craig track. The Craig heavy-duty track uses T-bolts to mount, so it would slide on the profile anyway. I used fender washers and plastic knobs to mount everything. After everything was secure and in place, I checked the range and the ability of everything. I could shift the fence to the side so that the handles could clear, and it would also give me some range if I ever wanted to put a hard stop out there for repeatability. And the only thing left after that was to add the adhesive scale to the top of the track. I've used this table now several times and I'm really happy with the results. I like the sacrificial center and the ability to slide the fence over and add some range to the hard stop that's out there. Plans for this video will be available on my website at CReevesMakes.com. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and stay tuned for some more content that I've got coming. Again, I'd like to thank Craig Tool for sponsoring this video and making this project happen. This is Casey with CReeves Makes, and thanks for watching.